Hello, everyone, and welcome along to this live webinar. And this time we are going to speak about auctions. And specifically in this webinar, we are launching our internal auction, Lendlord Auctions, managed and powered by the network auctions. And today we have two important co-hosts, Toby and David. So I think perhaps we can start with a brief introduction. So please, who wants to start, David or Toby? And of course, from Lendlord team, we have Sarel and Claire.
I'm happy to go first. Avram?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking your Thursday evening out to come and hear about the what we have for you. My name's David Sandham, and I'm the founder and director of the Essential Information Group. It's a business I set up 32 years ago. Basically, we have information on virtually every property coming to auction in the UK and a historic database of approaching 900,000 lots of what properties have sold for in the past at auction. And we've covered, literally thousands of auctioneers over the 30 years or so. It's especially useful, the service, it's a bit, we often call the right move of the auction world. It's especially useful for people who are either looking to buy at auction. We can tell them what's coming up in their area or their chosen location and property type. But absolutely, sometimes more crucially, it's a great resource to see what similar things have sold for at auction. So say you live in Hatfield, we could show you every house and flat which has been to Hatfield for auction in the last year, 20 years. So you can see what sort of prices have been achieved to give you an idea what yours might be worth at auction. And Toby will tell you that virtually every auctioneer uses our site. And certainly when Toby gets an instruction, often he'll, I think, go to our site and see what similar properties are selling for. If you do want to have a look around my site, just message me and we'll put it in the chat. Although I can't access the chat, so perhaps Salam will do it. It's davids@eigroup.co.uk. But anyway, that'll be in the chat. If you want to have a look around the site, message me and I'll set you up with a trial. And looking forward to your questions later on. Thank you.
We will make sure that we have the email on the chat. David, just one word before Toby to introduce yourself. So EIG will be the main provider for
I forgot that.
Yes, of course, for the Lendlord auctions. So basically, it's a partnership between EIG, Lendlord, and network auctions. And Toby, you want to perhaps 2 words about your technology about?
Yeah. We went live with our online auction site, one of the first ones in Europe, really, back in 2012, I think it was, we first launched it. And since then, we've sold over 32,000 properties on the site. About 75% of all of the auctions, properties going to auction in the UK are using our software, either the online auction system that you're going to see tonight or hear about, and also a live stream. So if you've seen Barnum Marcus, Allsop, Auction House, and hundreds of other auctioneers, have you seen their auctions being held? That's our platform. So we provide a white label service for them, and very pleased that Toby was one of our first ever clients using it. He's embraced it really since we launched. So it's great to be still working with Toby after all these years. Thank you, Toby, for your support.
Absolute pleasure.
Pleasure's been all mine, Toby.
Right. So Toby, perhaps you can introduce yourself and the network auctions.
Absolutely fine. Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you. My name's Toby Lembrick, and I am a director at Network Auctions. We are property auctioneers, and we sell properties throughout the UK, all types of property, residential, commercial, land, the weird and the wonderful. Just when I think I've seen it all, something comes up and surprises me, which is why I love being an auctioneer. So we were a very traditional auction business with an auctioneer and a gavel and a rostrum, waving at hopefully a busy room of people. And then COVID changed everything. And we are now an online auctioneer using David's software. And David had been banging on at me for years about, you've got to be online. What on earth are you doing? You're a dinosaur. Get in the future. I was very resistant about that. Loved what we did. Loved the event. Loved putting on an event and being part of that on the day. Auction was a real buzz. but I have to say, we will never hold another room auction. Being online is efficient. We have so much more control, so much more data about the people who are taking part in the auction. We analyse our attendances very closely. We are 300% up on people attending auctions and bidding compared to room. There is no way that you would convince me that holding an auction in a room is the way forward now. We're very excited to be working with Aviram and the Lendlord team. We feel there is a real niche opportunity for an auctioneer specialising in selling rented properties for landlords to landlords. We're going to do things differently, but predominantly we are going to be focusing on rented property and really working on that rented sector. So back to you, Aviram.
Thanks, Toby. So if I continue what you started to say, so basically we decided to start with this initiative, Lendlord Auctions, based on, it started with the current market situation. So we see some landlords struggling in refinancing and find themselves in a position they need to sell their properties right now. And from the other side, Lendlord has over 20,000 users, landlords on the platform that know the business. They are interested in buying tenanted properties. And then we just, and we also run a survey among our users. And we heard from them that they really want to see a buy and sell marketplace. And we thought that if we want to do a marketplace that can also provide certainty, speed to the process for both sides, the buyer and the seller, auction is the best way. Because of that, we started this initiative. The plan is to launch our first auction in mid-January. So it means that we now basically are open to get instructions from landlords who want to sell their properties. The exposure will be to landlord user base, 20,000 users, to the EAG database of property investors like auction buyers, and also the network auction database. And we also publish the properties on Rightmove. So people who will list their properties on Lendlord Auction will get high exposure. In terms of, before we start the discussion, I want to show how it basically, you can see it on the Lendlord platform. So for people who joined us, that they are already users and they have a Lendlord account. So on Lendlord, you have basically, so far we had three main functionalities: the invest part of the platform, where you can source properties, you can analyze property deals, and you can get information about postcodes. The manage side of the platform is the place to manage your the existing portfolio, your current properties, entire data, due dates, reminders, documents, etc. You can manage your tenants and tenancies, and you can also manage your cash flow on the entire portfolio or subsets or segments of your portfolio and get reports. And of course, the third part of the platform is the finance. So based on the data that you put on Lendlord, you can find mortgage products, or you can get access to bridging finance directly from Lendlord. And now the new initiative basically is the buy and sell section. And here you can find the Lendlord auction. And basically here you can see, of course, the benefits, but if you click on list property, you can start and list your property for sale. And we will show how you can do it later in the webinar. But before we show it, I think Toby and David, I want to start the discussion. Perhaps we can add very shortly, like what is auction basically? Because I think, I'm not sure, like I believe property investor lenders are aware of this tool, but perhaps just in a brief, and then we can discuss about why, if you need to sell, why selling at auction. So
okay, so shall I talk a little bit about auctions and the benefits of selling at auction?
Good idea.
Yes.
So, Aviram, before I was an auctioneer, I was an estate agent. And when I started as an auctioneer, I didn't understand why anybody would think about selling a property at auction. It seemed to me a place where you sold properties that were substandard, defective, and were for cash buyers only. And as I started to look more closely at it and looked at David's site and what was actually being sold in my area, which is Watford, it was quite staggering. And the key benefits of auction are speed and certainty. So when I talk to a prospective client about why they might consider using auction, I use the word closure a lot. At an auction, at the end of the auction, when an auctioneer puts a gavel down or we close the auction online, seller and buyer are legally bound and an exchange of contracts has taken place. So buyers come to that auction prepared to put their money where their mouth is, and the seller comes to auction guaranteeing the buyer he will not change his mind, and a contract is formed. And that is in stark contrast to the usual method of sale, where you make an offer, property comes off the market, several months go by while the solicitors wave at each other and decide to post each other questions and answers, and eventually, if you're lucky, you might get an exchange of contract. So an auction we can sell a property at auction within about 3 weeks of first instruction, and that's not getting an offer, that's getting an exchange of contracts. So the real advantage with the auction process is speed. Backing that up is certainty. And at the moment, we are in a situation where for a number of people are going to find it difficult to remortgage, are going to come under pressure to sell stock. So we're here to give an alternative to the estate agents. If you look at the auction market, it's been growing quite rapidly. And David, I think historically we accounted for about 1.5%, 2% of transactions. Where do you think we are now?
Well, I was just talking, we for the last 16 years been producing a newsletter, and basically that reported on how the sort of traditional room auctioneers fared each month, and we compare it to the same period the previous year. But now, of course, the fact that everything's gone online, the barriers to entry to become auctioneers have dramatically reduced. And we're seeing a lot more auctions now. With all the auctioneers who are purely online, that percentage has increased hugely. And next year we're planning to monitor that and allow people just to see how busy it is. You know, all the little online auctioneers you see around the place.
Yeah,
it really is a growing industry, and its success really is due to the fact that people like how it works. You know, that they're sensible with where they set the reserve and hence the guide price, and you get a bit of a feeding frenzy going on. And remember, with an agent, when the property's offered by an agent, it starts at X, and the sale price is generally going to be below X by some margin. An auctioneer starts low, might start the bidding just below the reserve, and the sky's the limit, really. And you only need a few people getting carried away in a bidding war, and I'm not going to lose this for 500 quid, so I'll place another bid, and that carries on as it did when I was bidding on that house in Redhill, Toby. I think I pulled out the bidding at about 465, and I set an absolute target of 420. But I broke my golden rule and went above it, but I didn't get it, sadly. Yeah, so it really is exciting, and sensible reserve, you'll get interest. You know, you're on Rightmove, the biggest portal there. It'll be well presented to a good client base, and our client base as well. Great way to sell a property. The certainty is fantastic, especially in today's market where it's 150 days to get an exchange, and 30-40% are going to fall out of bed. And if you do need to sell, you want a certain sale within 3 weeks, as Toby says, to get it away.
Yes, thanks, David and Toby. So now, if we drill down into the current market situation, although I think that it goes without saying, like the speed and certainty, that is something that become more crucial to sell properties if you need to sell. So I want to discuss a bit why you have this certainty at speed when you sell it at auction. So Toby, you started to talk about it, but if you can provide more details about the process, what basically happens, and what happens after there is a sale in the auction. So basically, what
Sure.
guarantee the sale to
Okay.
happen?
In terms of process, from first inquiry, it's a question of analysing the property and giving advice to the seller. So the most important factor with auction is called the reserve price. Two prices at auction, and David's already mentioned this: guide price, reserve price. Reserve price is the seller's minimum. The reserve is 100,000 and the bidding gets to 99,000, the property is not sold. So that reserve price is absolutely crucial. It has to do two things. It's got to be a price at which it's viable for the seller to sell the property at. It's also got to be a price that's going to create a market, generate momentum, and produce a successful result at auction. So the first thing is for auctioneer and seller to be on the same page in terms of the reserve. And at that point, it's a case of seller approving auctioneer's terms of business, auctioneer then working with seller and seller's solicitor to produce a legal pack. One of the key differences between an auction sale and selling with an estate agent is with auction, everything is available up front. There's full disclosure. So in order for a buyer to come to auction on auction day and exchange contracts, they need to be able to do their due diligence. And that due diligence involves doing, seeing a legal pack, which is all of the conveyancing information. So our view, Aviram, from the start has been that before we market a property, that legal pack is going to be in place. So from day one, when we publish that property online, we've got a legal pack available for potential buyers. They can do their research immediately. So our client needs to come with the mindset that they want to sell. They're serious about selling. They're the people that we can help. We have a legal solution for them. If they don't have a solicitor, we've got a partner in place who can produce legal packs very, very quickly. They know exactly what our requirements are. We need to get the legal pack in place. Then we're going to market the property. That's going to involve viewings, and that then culminates in auction day. We think for the solicitor to get the legal pack together is probably 7 to 10 days. We need 2 weeks of marketing once that pack is in place. So everything hinges on the solicitor's ability to produce the pack. And once we've got that, marketing, and then 2 weeks later, auction day. At the auction, if the property is sold, the buyer pays a 10% non-returnable deposit, and then it's 4 weeks to completion. Crucially, with auction, a landlord can sell a property with a tenant in situ, because guess what? There are lots of other landlords who want to add to their portfolio and are looking for turnkey investments with a tenant in place, paying rent. And if they can see the history of that tenant, and they can see a rent schedule, and they can see rents are paid, and that's what we'll be providing, then they're far more likely to bid. So the more information we can provide about the property, the circumstances of the property, the more people who are going to take part in the auction. And if you've got a lot of people bidding on the day, you can drive the price to a very high figure. And at the end of the auction, exchange of contracts, closure, and then completion 4 weeks later.
Sounds good. David, you want to add?
Yeah, just sort of expanding on the point Toby made. One of the beauties of selling the tenanted property at auction is that you will collect the rent for every single day up to the completion day. So there's no void. You're not saying, look, I want to sell the house, the property, so I'm going to serve you a section 21. He leaves, and then you get it ready for market, and it goes to market where you might have a void period of, if it's private tree, 3 or 4 months. So you get the rent all the way up to service your loan. And secondly, the incoming person thinks, well, I've got a rock steady tenant according to the rent schedules and what's been said by the managing agents and the owners. What's not to like about it? And you know, rents going up. It's a great. Whilst you might not see a huge amount of growth in the value of the property, certainly rents are going up, so you'll get rent appreciation. And a lot of the experienced buyers will be saying, I was just looking at one tonight, actually, I saw a property coming to auctions showing about 6% return. I'm comfortable with that. So, you know, I'll be looking at it, and it's an up and ready deal. It's lovely. Just to add a final point as well, Toby says, you know, a full legal pack will be prepared. It's not just about, I mean, solicitor has a lot to do, but actually a lot of it, or some of it, is about you, the landlord. And I would stress, even if you're not thinking of selling, do consider, just make sure, can I put my hands on guarantees and sign-offs for all the jobs I've had done around the property? You know, got a new boiler, have I got that certificate of installation? Put some new windows in, have I got the fenster certificate? And the other thing to consider is when you sell a property, you need to produce answer all the questions on a fairly detailed questionnaire called a TA6 if it's freehold, TA10 if it's leasehold, or the PIQ. And it's asked question, who owns the boundary? Where are the boundaries? Is it on mains, drains, etc.? And anybody can get those forms, fill them out, so you've got it in your top pocket. So if you do decide to sell, you're not going from a standing start, you're just checking that the questions you've answered. Takes a few hours to fill in, well worth doing now, because it will be an aid memoir and a checklist as to what you will need when you come to sell the property, either next in January at auction, or if you sold it by private treaty in June. It'd be a really good document to have in hand. It's a pain in the ass to do. I've recently done it for my house, not because I want to sell it, but so that when I do decide to sell it, I've got the 90% of it, of the work done. So do consider that, doing what you need to provide as the owner of the property. It's not all about the solicitor. And, you know, I'm sure Toby's seen properties fall out of bed because the vendor, you know, if you've got a leasehold flat, can you show 3-month service, 3-year service charge requirements? The better the documentation, the more money you're going to get for your property, because the risk element as to what's unknown in the legal pack is vastly reduced, so the purchaser can bid more money on it. If you can see 3 years without, you know, and a service charge and a sinking fund in place, great news for him.
Maybe it's a great point. I think that one of the advantages of using Lendlord on the managed side of the platform is that basically you can keep the entire data of your entire portfolio online and access the data easily. We also have the document management, so you can upload basically
Fantastic
the document, yeah, and download them when you need. So and I definitely agree, as much information you can provide to the potential buyer, then more bidders that you will get.
Very much so.
So the next topic for our webinar is the differences between selling through an agent and at auction. Toby, perhaps I will let you start going over this table. So this is basically a summary of different points and what are the differences. So Toby.
Yeah, 3 words, Abiram, 3 words: subject to contract. An estate agency sale, when they show on the portals that they've sold it, they put SSTC, sold subject to contract. It's not sold. They've accepted an offer and they're hoping it's going to exchange contracts. Auction, it's sold on the day. It's sold, you've exchanged contracts. So the principal differences, and I've already highlighted them, are that with auction, nothing is subject to contract. That is not to say that auction is this wonderful panacea. It's not for everybody. We can sell absolutely any property, from the most rundown shack to the most stunning high value property at auction. It's got nothing to do with the property. Auction is about the circumstances of the seller. So my clients tend to be those people who value speed and certainty and closure over potentially getting top price on the open market. The great advantage of selling with an estate agent is that you can tell them the price you want and you can sit back and wait for it. You might never get it, but if that's the price you want, that's how it's going to be. With auction, you really have to think like a buyer. Why is a buyer going to buy my property? What's going to be attractive about it? What would turn me on if I was looking for a property now? And that's how, as an auctioneer, I approach valuation. I'm thinking like a buyer. I'm looking for yield.
I will interrupt you because I think I didn't share the right page. So now you have also the, can you see the table, the comparison table?
Okay, got you.
Okay,
Got
okay.
very good.
Okay,
So let's work through from the top. Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
What we're saying there is from the point of instruction to exchange of contracts with an agent, 4 months. 4 months if you're lucky and nothing goes wrong. And David's alluded to the fact that 30 to 40% of transactions never make it, don't get over the line. So you could wait 3 months for a buyer, they change their mind, you're back to square one. With auction, we reckon from instruction to exchange about 28 days. From exchange to completion, well, with an agent, there's no fixed time scale. It's roughly a month. And with auction, guess what? It's about a month. Some of my corporate clients, local authorities particularly, want completion in 14 days. And that's absolutely fine. But of course, if you put that kind of restriction on the sale, you're going to narrow the market to those people who have got cash and can draw on it right now. So we'll normally say to people, 4 to 6 weeks is the optimum period for completion. Tenanted property has become very difficult to sell for estate agents. When the buy-to-let boom was in full swing, agents suddenly realised that they could work out what a rental yield was if they had a calculator, most of them. And they started putting rental yields on properties and getting switched on to what was actually of interest to landlords and investment buyers. But as that market has drifted out, they find it very difficult to sell tenanted property on the open market. For us, with auction, and the reason we're working together, Aviram, is that we know there is a solid marketplace of investment buyers who want to add to portfolios. And this is a great way to buy as an investor, because all of the information is available in front. There's no time wasted. And at the end of the auction, if yours is the winning bid, you know your purchase is secure. You come away from the auction and you can start planning for completion. The type of sale. This is my point about subject to contract. The buyer can renegotiate or withdraw at any time with the private treaty sale. With auction, they are all in on the day. They are putting their money where their mouth is. You are selling to serious, motivated business people who are buying with the head, not with the heart. And they are prepared to commit on the day. And that is the huge difference and the huge advantage. David, anything you want to add to that before we talk about price and fees?
Yes, a couple of things, actually. I just add that on the completion, if you can push a completion out to 6 or even 8 weeks, you will have a wider audience of people who can work with that. I think the local authorities are completely stupid, and I use that word with a capital S, trying to do it within 14 days. I mean, you know, some repossessions, the banks, for God's sake, they can borrow at 0.5%. And yet what they're saying is there's a lot of people who bid at auction thinking, I've got the 10%, I've probably got 20, 30%. I've just got it between exchange and completion, go and find the completion money. And you want as many of that type of person bidding. And if you said 8-week completion, if you can run it, yeah, you're going to have to wait 8 weeks for your money, or say an extra month, but you will have a double-digit percentage increase in the number of people who bid on the property. The other thing I think I just mentioned here is, just to clarify, Toby's been rightly talking about auction exchange on the day. Just want to touch on modern method of sale. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that phrase. This is where generally there are actually now, modern method is where basically the vendor doesn't pay a fee, but the buyer pays a percentage of the hammer price as a buyer's premium. On the fall of the gavel with modern method, it's about 50-50 now, and you need to read very carefully the details if you are looking at that method to buy, what happens on the fall of the gavel. Some of it is on the fall of the gavel, you've exchanged contracts and typically got 8 weeks to complete. Others, you've basically bought an option under which you've got to exchange and complete within the 8 weeks. If there's no completion in 8 weeks, then you're going to lose as a buyer. You would lose the buyer's premium you would have paid on the fall of the gavel. So I just want to clarify that there's a sort of an auction hybrid called modern method. You can Google it and understand what it means. it is important to understand that, what it means. But Toby's talking about contracted sale, you know, which is really certain and the traditional way of doing it, and I think the best way.
Thank you, David. Let's have a chat about price and the way estate agents and auctioneers look at this differently. So with an estate agent, basically seller tells the agent the price he wants, unless the agent suggested something higher, in which case I'm sure he'll agree to that. But in essence, you are marketing your property at the same price as competitive properties. So you're effectively asking for full market value. And that's one of the warm and cozy, reassuring reasons why people use estate agents. With auction, that reserve price has got to do a very important job. It has got to create a market. When we held auctions in rooms, we used to say it gets bums on seats. It's the same principle. If your price is too high at auction, you won't create momentum and you probably won't sell. So in most instances, properties are offered at a discount at auction. Price is not the only reason why a property comes to auction, but it's the main reason property comes to auction. We sell properties that are in particularly desirable areas. We sell properties that have great potential to add value. We do sell short lease properties. We sell non-standard construction properties. And auction is a great environment for them because we're selling to cash buyers. But let's say you've got a modern flat with a tenant in a block and market value is 200,000 and it takes 2 to 3 months to sell a property which is vacant with an estate agent. If we put that property into auction at 200,000, it's unlikely to attract a lot of interest from investors prepared to exchange contracts on the day. So we'd probably be recommending a discount. There is no fixed figure. You think like a buyer, you look at yield, you look at potential for capital increase, we'll make a recommendation. If it's in line with expectations, well, maybe auction might be the way to go. But in principle, an agent will start high and negotiate down. An auctioneer will start lower and look to drive that price up through competitive bidding. David, anything you want to add to that?
No, except for in the agents thing, there's nothing which is pressing for the the vendor. It can take, negotiations can take almost weeks when you've got a buyer on the hook and the agent's trying to get him up. In auction, it's all done and dusted in 2 or 3 minutes. The purchaser is thinking, well, he's already bid 100 grand, somebody bids 101 grand, he's only got to bid another 1,000 and he's back in the frame to buy it, and they get carried away. It's happened to me loads of times, and that's what one of the things that drives the auctions. People saying, well, I'm comfortable bidding 100, which I've done, somebody's outbid me, oh sorry, it's only another grand or two and I'm going to be back as the highest bidder and maybe I'll win it. And then they've rebased the value at 102,000 and off they go again. It all happens quickly and the job's done.
Thank you. And then we're talking about fees. So it tends to be more expensive to sell with an auctioneer rather than an estate agent. Fees to sell with Lendlord will be a commission of 2% plus VAT and an auction entry fee of £500 plus VAT. When you list your property with an estate agent, it's highly unlikely they will be asking you for upfront money. But of course, they won't be doing the work that we do at auction, which is really driving your solicitor to get that legal pack through, marketing the property, dealing with all of the pre-auction matters, dealing with all of your buyers' anti-money laundering requirements, etc., in the lead up to auction day. Estate agents' fees tend to be in the region of 1%. Some of the online operators will do it for a bag of beans. So yeah, there's a fee liability and your reserve price may be below market value. Those are the two issues that you need to consider before instructing us to take your property to auction. And we will expand on that fully with you before you make a decision. There are lots of people who value speed and certainty more than the lowest fee and the highest price.
Okay, thanks, Toby. Great comparison. By the way, I forgot to ask people, if you have questions, we have a session of question and answer in the end. but feel free to put the questions on the chat and we'll answer in the end. I think last topic before we go to the Q&A, we want to show basically how you can start the process from your Lendlord account and then basically apply to sell your property. Sarel put the links on the chat, so if you want to start the process, there's no obligation to complete the process, just submit an inquiry, then our team will contact you. You can get a quote. You don't need to pay the entry fee before you sign the terms and conditions, and basically we instruct the solicitors to provide the legal pack. Or you can schedule a call with our team. Also, you have it on the chat. So I go back to Lendlord. Can you see now my Lendlord account? Because I had a problem before with the share screen. Okay, good. So from Lendlord, go to buy and sell from the menu, click on list property, and then you will get a questionnaire to start listing your the property for sale, the ownership of the property, if it's a company or it's individual. We just need the contact details of the applicant. If it's a company, one of the directors. Then to the property address, if you already have your portfolio, it should come up from the existing data that you already put on Lendlord. If it's a tenanted property, the platform will ask you several questions about the tenancy. If not, it will skip to this page. A few words about your motivation, why you want to sell this property, and also something that is important. It's related to what Toby just mentioned. What is more important for you at this stage? Is it top price or speed and certainty? And this will guide our team to direct the conversation and set the expectation in the first call and get the relevant information about the property if you're interested in top price. Then click next and proceed. Once you click proceed, then the inquiry was submitted. The platform will ask you to fulfill some more details about the property. But at this stage, even if you haven't, the team, some of our team members, team that Claire is leading, will give you a call just to make sure that all the data is there. Few words about the process, and then Toby and the auction network team will start the discussion. If we see that there is a relevancy to sell at auction, so Toby, perhaps you can discuss very brief, because I think that you already mentioned the steps, just what happens after we get the information, what basically are the steps until like the auction day.
Yeah, fine. So what we'll look to do, Aviram, is either me or one of my colleagues will have a conversation with the seller, and we want to understand what their circumstances are, what their motivation is for the sale. We want to understand more about the property. We'll go through a quick fact find with them, make sure they understand how the process works, make sure that fits with their circumstances. And if it sounds like auction is the way to go, we'll then go away and do some due diligence about the property and produce an appraisal, go back to client and talk about where we think the reserve price needs to be and why. And if that aligns with their expectations, well, then we can look about taking forward and getting terms of business across to them and starting to move things forward. I had a chat with a client, a Lendlord client yesterday, who was interested in the process. And we did a full appraisal on the property, went back to them with a recommendation not to sell at auction. We felt there were reasons why the price would sell for significantly more to an end user with vacant possession rather than to a landlord. we're not here to list properties. We're here to sell properties. Auction is about closure. It's a brilliant way of selling when your circumstances are in line. And if they're not, we're not going to try and put a square peg in a round hole. So it's really a question of understanding the circumstances of the seller, really understanding what they're selling, making an accurate recommendation and going forward on that basis.
Amazing. Okay, thanks, Toby. And of course, like as always, you will get personal service during the process. And as Toby said, if we think it's not for auction, we will tell you that, and we might suggest other options. One more thing I wanted to show is basically the auction website. Can you see it? Can you see the portal with the two logos?
Yes.
Okay. So so from the buyer's perspective, they will see the lots in this website. They can enter the lot and see more information. This, of course, is a demo site right now. And then if they would like to bid, they will start the registration process, and everything is like, I think, any other online auction house using the EIG technology in the backend. And then in the auction day, of course, you'll get all the online bidding, all the alerts, everything will be in place. Okay, so I think we covered most of the topics. So Toby and David, if you have anything else to add, and also we can take questions if there are from the participants. So if someone wants to ask, just you can put the question on the chat. And Toby, in the meantime, if you have closing words or things that you want to emphasize about what discussed, David, as well, feel free.
So it's just to say we're looking to run auctions every 2 weeks, Avaram, and our first auction is scheduled for the middle of January. If you want to make that auction, you need to be talking to us now, because we want to get your solicitors up and running with the legal pack so we can hit marketing right in the early new year as the market starts to wake up. But you will never be more than 2 weeks away from an auction. If you need to sell, if you want to get on with it, we will be able to assist you. There will be no delay.
I think perhaps, I don't know if there is a problem with the chat. Claire, can you write something in the chat just in case? If there is, because David, you said that you couldn't before.
Sorry, what? Just to add to that, yeah, I think what network.
Okay, everything okay. Okay, so yeah, David, go ahead.
They're just really to enhance what just talk about what Toby just mentioned. Then some auctioneers say we're going to hold an auction every 8 weeks. Well, if you're a motivated seller and want to sell it and you've just passed their closing for the next auction, that's of no use to you. And I'm really pleased that here we go, Toby and Aaron are going down to an auction every 2 weeks. It means you're never more than 10 working days away from the next auction. And it does mean that you might say, okay, I'm going to put this in the auction coming up in 3 weeks' time. And if you actually couldn't quite get all the legal documents in place, it's one button Toby has to click to push it into 2 weeks later, not 2 months, 2 weeks. And that's really important. It just demonstrates and accelerates the speed of sale for you. And again, if it doesn't quite hit reserve, Toby can put it in again 2 weeks later, lower reserve that happened, and hopefully get it away. And of course, everybody who looks at legal documents and views it or does interacts with the property, Toby will have their details and able to phone them up or email them and get them back on the case to come and buy your property. So really, if Sainsbury's only opened every 5 weeks, you wouldn't be happy. They're open every day, so you can come and go as you wish, really, with the system now.
Absolutely. All right. So again, if you want to learn more, you can schedule a call with our team, or if you want to start an inquiry, feel free to submit an inquiry using the link so on the chat. We have a question from Graham. Hi, Graham. what are the costs to buy registration? Toby, you want to?
Yeah, really good question. We've talked about this, Graham. Aviram and I are of the opinion that sellers should not be recovering costs from the buyer. One of the big issues in my world is unreasonable special conditions, with sellers asking a buyer to pay all of their auction fees, all of their legal fees, and some fees that they're not telling you what they are, but they want that money as well on top of the hammer price. So our view is that the seller is our client, the seller pays our fees. We charge the buyer a fixed buyer's administration fee of £1,500 plus VAT. That's what it will cost you to buy a Lendlord auction property. You'll have your own legal costs on top of that, but there will be no other hidden charges. There will be no other fees.
Thanks, Toby. All right. So thanks, everyone. Again, you can use the links if you want to learn more. We have another question. Okay, Graham said thanks. Thanks, Graham. Thank you very much, Toby and David, for joining us. Thanks, Claire and Sorel from the Lendlord team. And of course, we are also available on the chat. So feel free to contact us through this chat box as well. So thanks, and we will publish this video on our YouTube channel and send it in our weekly email. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.